indispensable to the achievement of stable and dignified livelihoods for all, as well as the creation of lasting resilience. At the same time, I worry about the mainstream perspective where prosperity is often regarded, ironically, as incompatible with environmental sustainability and relegated to the margins of global agenda for Africa. I will explain this a bit later. As a matter of fact, many Africa's global partners evasively skirt around this necessary conversation, making it difficult and uncomfortable. Explicitly and implicitly, they encourage Africa to focus on managing the consequences of climate change, since only others in the global north are understood to possess the capacity to solve the global problems of such character and magnitude. This unjust dynamic is unnecessary, inappropriate, and only serves to hold us back from fulfilling our potential. Good people, let me ask you, who said that Africa cannot be part of the solution? That when Africa is being discussed, it's only being discussed in the context of the problems. And our voices are limited to, oh no, you are victims of climate change. We will help you to manage situation. We will manage you to deal with adaptation. We will look for some little money for mitigation. We do not want to be in that corner. We want to be in the conversation about the solutions. And we have what it takes. And shortly, I will be proposing to you why I consider that, in fact, the reason why we have been in a circus for all these years, it's because we as Africans have not stepped forward with our capabilities to provide the solution to this challenge of climate change. As the chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Governments on Climate Change, I fully associate myself with the consensus that has evolved among Africa's leaders who have refused to be tethered to this unsatisfactory ideology. Instead, we have been pushing a fresh, affirmative, and solution-oriented perspective. And I have come here today to ask you to join us in executing this change of course, articulating a fundamentally Pan-African principle and amplifying new ethos that summons the world to live, produce, and consume in harmony with nature that will be spearheaded by Africa. The single most important priority commitment that will propel Africa to lasting security, sustainable stability, and shared prosperity is an opportunity-oriented focus on climate change. Our continent's abundant wealth of natural resources, immense endowments of untapped green renewable energy, our youthful demographic profile, and our increasingly enlarging market precisely constitute the fundamental elements required to mitigate and then reverse climate change while driving a new green industrial revolution. Africa's untapped renewable energy, let me give you some numbers. Africa's untapped renewable energy potential is more than 50 times the world's cumulative demand by 2030. The continent's untapped solar, wind, and geothermal potential is rated as super abundant in most African countries, meaning the potential is over 1,000 times the current demand. Yet, nearly 600 million Africans lack access to electricity, while another 150 million have highly unreliable access, and a whopping 900 million Africans have no access to clean cooking energy. Just imagine the paradox that we are in the middle of plenty while living in scarcity. The primary cause of Africa's minimal investment in exploiting its abundant green energy potential is the lack of energy-intense anchor demand. Such demand would make investment in additional energy generation capacity bankable and render universal energy access possible. Scientists tell us that achieving the net zero emissions by 2050 is imperative to sustain human civilization. Failure to reach this target will lead to devastating and irreversible impacts on ecosystems, weather patterns, and sea levels. At present rates, it will be extremely difficult, if not altogether impossible, for the world's industrial nations and fast-growing emerging economies to achieve net zero goals on time. The only way for the world to achieve this net zero aspiration by 2050 is for countries which presently have net negative emissions, as we do in most of Africa. And I really want you to listen to me on this point, because this is the turning point. The only way for the world to achieve the net zero aspiration by 2050 is for countries which presently have net negative emissions, as we do in most of Africa, to make up for those on course to missing the 2050 goal. The implication of this scenario is that African countries are uniquely positioned to limit own emissions and at the same time contribute reductions everywhere. We are not only in a position that we can limit our own emissions, but we can assist others. We can contribute to the reduction by